in response to, I think Minister Timmermans has raised a lot of the fundamental issues for Europe coming out of the crisis. Maybe we have talked too much about the technical issues that need to be done in response to the crisis in the currency, without, as he say, engaging the emotions and the basic problems of getting support for integration. How do you see things from a more Southern European, from a Spanish perspective? It seems like everywhere we need closer integration to make the system work, and yet the people are less happy to integrate now than they have been in a long time.
First of all, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me. And second, I believe that we in Europe, we needed good decisions, good politics. No more or less integration, because more integration with bad policies, there is no sense. The problem is if we have a vision, a project for Europe, and we take the decision in the right track to obtain good results. Maybe historically the story of the European Union is a great success, peace and prosperity. The problem is you must adapt the position of the European Union and Europe at the new situation in the world, and transform domestically the institution of the European Union, make a lot of reforms, and to obtain political answers to challenge today for Europeans. This is a question for me. This is not more or less integration in general.
Do you think during the crisis, and especially given the economic impact that it has had in Spain, people often the British journalists go to Spain and say, well, surely now you regret going into the single currency, and then we are surprised to hear that people say, no, we still think it was very important for our future. How has the attitude to the European project changed in Spain as a result of all of the pain you've been through now?
Well, I led to my country to the single currency, no? Because I'm share the idea of the single currency. But the single currency are based in two special pillars, in my view. In one hand is stability and discipline. On another hand is flexibility, more competitiveness. If you lose stability of discipline, you have a problem. If you lose both, you have a catastrophe. This is the question. I back to my position, prior position, is necessary good or bad policies. 10 years ago, 4 years ago, Spain touched the sky, the heaven with their fingers, because it was the history of a very great success. More than 15 jobs, more than 50% of jobs that were created in Europe are created in Spain. The growth of the country was spectacular. Millions and millions of immigrants back to Spain, go to Spain to live in. Very spectacular, and it is an example of the discipline. Bad policies destroy this position. Destroy this position. And to recover confidence, recover trust. This is one of the problems of Europe today. Recover trust is very complicated and very difficult in this moment now. But we needed to recover this. I recall perfectly, but in 2003, 2004, France and Germans don't respect the levels of deficit in the Stability Pact and Growth, 3%.
Well, you had been told you were
no.
well underneath. You had been told you had to.
We are perfect at the time. We are perfect. We are masters at the time. But the two most important countries in Europe decide taking a very bad decision. As we cannot respect the rules, we change the rules. It is unacceptable, because the message that you can send another countries, what a disaster. And we must recover the seriousness of our policies in Europe, and build a Europe more flexible, with more openness, with more competitiveness, with a new social pact that offers to the new generations more integrating a new redefinition of the Atlantic policies, and if it's possible, with the UK inside the European Union.
But you have said yourself, Minister, that we need to rewrite the social contract in Europe. When people hear that, they think of their wallets. They think this is only going to go one direction and it's going to be bad for me. How do you present it? I mean, the way that Mr. Assad has presented it as a positive social pact, but people don't see it as a positive thing.
Well, I think the most convincing argument I can use in the Netherlands is to take us outside of Europe and to look what is happening in the rest of the world. And there is this enormous surge in Asia, which will continue, which people sometimes see as threatening, but which could be a huge opportunity for Europe if we get our act together. And I think if you remain stuck within the European arguments in Europe, and especially if you boil Europe down to the Brussels bubble, you will always lose the argument. Because Brussels is doing everything wrong that it could possibly do wrong in terms of creating public support. National politicians will have to create that public support. It will be our responsibility. But I believe the strongest argument is to look at the outside world to see what is happening in Asia, how strong Asia is becoming, and how many opportunities this would offer for a Europe that is prepared to join action on the economy and on other issues. There is a lack, you know, especially in my country and probably in many other countries, people who can't, you have this huge distinction between people who can move and people who can't move. If many of the people here, if they see an opportunity elsewhere, they simply move elsewhere. Many of the people we depend on as fabric of our society, they depend on the place they are for their future, on the jobs they have there, on the industries there, etc., etc. And as long as we cannot prove that what we're doing is leading to more stability in their region, more opportunity for them, more opportunity for their children, they will not support us in going international with things. And I'm quite worried about this because it is not just a problem of stating your case, it is also a problem of finding new ways of communication with your constituency, with the people, because the way politicians operate in general is just by sending messages, gives people the impression that we are good at talking but not good at listening.
As an economist, what worries me most is you can say all of these things and there is a political process around the future of Europe. But I don't see the ingredients for growth in the next few years. The amount of adjustment that is taking place, the way the adjustment is taking place, many people are worried it will mean maybe at the end of it you have adjustment, but it's 5 years, another 5 years of very slow growth, more recession in Spain, maybe more than another year of recession.
But the problem for me continues to remain politics. And the two pillars of the European Union are really the single market and the euro. These are the more important pillars. A single market working with some difficulties, but working. Now we must take a very important decision, very strategical decision, existential decision for Europe, that is to define a free trade area with the US, open the rest of the world. This decision, in my view, is politically existential for Europe, because this is the base of a new redefinition of the Atlantic policy. That means the base to redefine the strategic situation in the world. And as European, I want to be influential in this moment. And second, we must take in the next 2 years in Europe, in my view, one important decisions. We want to finish the Eurozone or no? Because the Eurozone is established a new building. But you can't live inside the building without finish the building. It is absurd. It is absurd that exists a single currency that before 1999. You have to create the single currency, an area monetary stability to organize one financial market, unique financial market. But you have today 17 financial markets with the euro. 17 financial markets with the euro, there is no sense. Doesn't work. This is one of the problems. That means that if you live in Berlin or in The Hague, the value of the currency is different than in Paris or in Madrid or in another country. This is impossible. In the next 2 years, we must finish this idea. This means establish the condition to the union banking and most fiscal coordination. But for me, the basic is finish the logical inside the Eurozone. And politically, if the Eurozone rests and finish since today, 2 years, the risk for the European Union will be total. The fall of the euro will be the total fall of the European Union. And I don't like this scenario because this is a very, very, very bad scenario. No? This is the question for me. No?
I think part of rethinking is to accept that given the high level of our development, given also our demographic development, slow growth will be part of Europe for probably a generation. So it's one thing to always think in terms of how do we get high growth rates. It's another thing to be honest and say, how do we create stronger fabric in society, accepting the fact that our average annual growth rate will be 1, 2, perhaps, if we're lucky, 3% over the next generation. I think that is rethinking. That is being honest about where we stand as Europeans. And another point, why are people not prepared to do what is absolutely necessary and logical, as President Aznar has explained? That is because the issue of moral hazard, in political terms, has not been addressed. I can't take this argument to the Dutch people that we need more economic governance in Europe as long as the Dutch people have the impression that we are reforming, that is, reducing our social welfare system because we need to pay for irresponsible bankers who are, again, getting their bonuses, getting higher paychecks. But we're still paying for the mistakes they made in the past. And likewise, on a European level, the stereotypes we have back and forth. Why do we, as Dutch, have to pay for Greeks who retire at 50 to drink ouzo on the beach and do nothing, which is an idiotic stereotype, but it sticks in the minds of people. And likewise, why Greeks would argue, why do we have to have this idiotic austerity program just to satisfy some Nazis in the Netherlands and Germany who still dream of creating a Fourth Reich? I mean, these stereotypes back and forth are a reality in Europe and do determine political action, because you see, you can talk about UKIP in the UK, about Wilders in the Netherlands and all these other parties, but you see other parties adapting to them. You know, as Churchill said, as I quoted Churchill before on this, you know, the only thing you get out of feeding this crocodile is that the crocodile will eat you last, but you will be eaten if you play into the hands of this Eurosceptical nonsense.
And we were agreeing that maybe David Cameron needed to remember that quotation as well in his approach to Europe. But doesn't some of this come down to something which you do see in the UK debate as well, but has come out of the crisis? I mean, Senor Aznar talks about we need to put the walls in place, we need to finish the system. It has been presented as a technical project. The single market is presented as a question of getting rid of technical things, trade barriers. And it is only maybe in response to this crisis that people are realizing even the things that are not to do with the crisis, even just continuing, the free movement of people, the fundamental pillar of single market, free movement of people, goods and services. Well, free movement of people has caused pretty much the creation of the UK Independence Party here, the immigration into the UK. the free movement of services. People don't want to compete in Germany and other countries. They don't want to have free, open competition, not just of goods, but also of consultants and plumbers and goodness knows what else. These are things that they are not just technical. They are raising fundamental political issues.
Well, because this is linked with a moral issue. It is a moral issue. If free markets means that CEOs get richer and I lose my job because my job's been exported to Romania, then you will not get the support for, by your public for this project. If free markets mean that I have a new job, that we can trade better, that we can create more value in our society, then you will get the support of the people. But you need to state that case in a broader context than we're doing today. We're just trying to easily react to populist movements, and that will not work in the way we're doing it today in Europe. But the fundamental point made by President Aznar is still true, especially in the Netherlands. We make rules on the European level, but if the big countries don't like the rules, we simply skip the rules. If smaller countries don't like the rules, they get punished by the big countries. And this is sort of the feeling that was created because France and Germany did not want to abide by the Stability Pact 10 years ago. And it has never left the system. It is still there today.
Do you worry about, I mean, as you said, you took your country into the Eurozone. You were part of making them such a success within the European Union. Do you worry, do you see this kind of disturbing politics and you wonder where it might lead, the fact that people are now making these comparisons?
Well, it is not, for the people, it's not the right answer for the problems of challenges. We can seek in another answers. And all the populist movements are dangerous in our societies. I don't like this, but it's an expression of the lack of correct politics in Europe. And we must establish a very serious project. This is a responsibility of the leadership in Europe. No? How happened with the Eurozone? How happened if you decide to integrate the Eurozone finally with the rest of these European institutions? How happened with the sovereignty of the countries? How happened with the decision of the UK? How happened with the relation of the US? This is, for me, the key questions for Europe. No? More than organize a huge mess about the populist movements. No? And maybe some lack of leadership in Europe exists today, and it's necessary. Politics today is very hopeful everywhere, especially in Europe. But we needed politics and good politicians more than ever to establish some projects. In 2000, we put on the table in Europe a very serious program to convert Europe in the most important influential economic area in the world. This is the Lisbon process. National states, economic reform, Atlantic policies. We abandoned this problem. This was a disaster. We must recover a project, serious project for the Europeans. It's possible. I think that it's possible. It's necessary. Morally, it is indispensable. And it is the responsibility of the current leaders today in the European Union.
I think the fundamental point, if I can make this final point from my point of view, on a national level and on a European level, the social contract is failing because those people we're asking to pay for this social contract don't get an answer when they ask, what is in it for me? They believe they are asked to contribute to a system that will not come to their aid when they need it. And that in society is very dangerous. We need to recreate the feeling that the way we have organized society on a national level and a European level benefits all of society, especially the middle classes, not just the weaker parts of society, because the middle classes will have to provide the fabric for our political and European project. If they don't, because they don't think there's anything in it for them, then we will fail.
This is a key question, middle classes. if we continue in our countries destroying middle classes, the consequences for politically for Europe will be very dangerous.
Yes, I agree.
Middle classes, preserved middle classes, with less taxes, more reforms, and explain that they are the pillar of the stability of the society, for me, fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Very final thing. We're going to talk in a minute, we're going to broaden it out, take a step back from Europe in a minute. So I'm interested, and I was interested in what President Aznar said about the European-US free trade agreement. Do you think, and there's clearly a risk that the rest of the world just looks at Europe and says, this is all navel-gazing, whatever happens, America's just going to be, Europe's going to be talking about itself for the next 5 years and not getting anything done. Do you see it as significant as President Aznar? Do you think that this trade deal could help with that?
I think it's fundamental. I think the trade deal is fundamental because it will not just create an example for the rest of the world. I'm sure if we get this free trade agreement with the United States, the rest of the world will want to join, and it will change fundamentally trade patterns across the world, which is certainly on the national capacity of great interest to the Netherlands. But secondly, it will also drive home the point in Europe that reform within Europe is needed if we want to take opportunity in the future. We cannot close off our markets and hope to avoid reform internally. We will need to reform our societies and our economic systems.
Well, thank you very much to both of you. You can see that maybe one of the themes of this session was that we didn't necessarily want to spend all our time thinking about Europe because it wouldn't necessarily put a smile on our face. But you've certainly raised...
I can say 3 words?
3 words, yes.
Europe was possible thanks to Europe, to the Atlantic link, in fact. Is possible thanks to the Atlantic link and will be possible thanks to the Atlantic link. Don't forget this.
Don't forget that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.